Okay, I have now started streaming. The merge stream. This is part 2 of it and of this test, and we now are going to be working with the arrays, and we're going to be dealing with array manipulation. Now, the first question asks there. So we're going to be working inside our NetBeans, and I'm going to open up the preloads that you guys had for that term under the M2019 folder. Now, hello. Sorry, hello was meaning I did something wrong. Not hello as in hello. All right. Now, what you'll notice, the first question asks us to work in the manager class. There was existing methods there because that was me what I went through in the last video. We are now going through the next step, which is to do this. Now, the first question it says there, create a method called getPos, which will NB receive a name. So personally, what I would do is I would highlight this, because what that tells me is that I am going to need to receive a name. So I've got a parameter of a string, and it says there return. So always look for what I'm receiving and what I'm returning. So the first thing I do in creating this method, I know I'm going to receive text and position. What data type is position? An int. So position in the array is an integer. So as stands, I know I'm going to have a public. So let me zoom in on this a bit. I know I'm going to have a public int. The method is going to be called getPos, and I'm going to receive string name, and then I know I'm going to return. I could even create a pos equal to -1, and I can return pos. Why do I make it to -1, not 0? Because 0 exists in the array. There is a position 0 in the array, so if it doesn't exist, I want to return -1. Now this here, I would have already given you marks here. But even, quite frankly, even if you just did this, or even if you just did this, you would have got 1 mark. That is, for me, a mark already. You've created a method head, and that's just for you reading. I need to receive a name, I need to return a number. That's it. That gets you marks. Then I know, because I'm dealing with, here I'm working with an array, and I need to look through an array. I know I need to loop through my array, and when you loop through your array, you know you're going to have to stop at num. So when I loop, I always will stop at, so I just do 4tab and I stop at num. In this case, it'll be warriors or weapons? Warriors. So I know I'm going to stop at num warriors. So you'll always work with that. Second mark, done. Do you guys get me? Now, my next one is I'm going to have to try find if this warrior is there. So I would go if my array, so my array is called warriors, position I dot get name, so I'm seeing if the get warrior name dot equals, so I'm checking if the warrior name of that object is the same as the name as the string that's passed through. Then I know they are the same. So it means that I have now found the warrior I am wanting to get. Now, there were a couple of people who actually didn't do too badly, who then decided to return someone did this. I'm not going to mention names. Nick. Sorry. Someone did this. I'm joking. You got the full logic right, which is more than what a lot of people, but then you accidentally return num warriors. You need to return I, which is the position you're currently looking for. Do you guys get that? There's no? Yeah. So you're returning I as the position in the array. Okay, so now the I means that, okay, I'll loop through, I get to position 0, I don't find it in position 0, I go to position 1, I don't find it in position 1, I get to position 2, oh, I found it there, return 2, because that's where I found this name. Do you guys get me? You don't need to carry on looking. I think Malcolm, you carried on looking till the end. You went through everything, and then you only returned it at the end, which is fine. It's just more than one thing. Well, then you would do a filter. This is why a search. The idea is it's only returning 1. This is why you have a primary key. It's the idea that the index means it's unique identifiers when you're doing a search. If you're doing something where you want to return more than 1, it's called a filter. So if you're filtering, you assume more than 1. If you're searching, you assume 1. So, but in this case, you would normally search by a primary key. Yes.
So there's 2 return statements over there, but where is the return I and this return -1?
As soon as the objective, the moment I've said public int getPos, I am saying the objective of this method is to return an integer. The moment I return an integer, it's like I click where I'm done.
So it stops the entire thing.
It stops everything. It does not continue after it returns. So it will never get to this -1 unless it's completely looped through everything and hadn't found it, then it would get to the return -1. Does this make sense? Okay, now the next thing I'm doing here is if I go to my next question, so are you guys happy with this question? Yeah. Okay, now this next question was badly answered, and I gave Malcolm a mark here, though I'm now naming names again, but I mean, it's not bad. Don't judge each other. Right? But no, he got this right, and I gave him full marks. Because he actually, and I'll explain the reason why now. I gave him full marks for this. But now it says write a code called getWarrior, which will retrieve. So again, I look at receive name and return the object in the array. Now, for me, so the fact that when I create this method, I'm going to say public. Now, what is it returning? It's returning an object in the array. So if I look at my array is the gallo glass object. Now, what Malcolm did, which was completely correct, he said return object. Because I said return the object, and that's correct. It's what I asked. And each warrior object, a gallo class, is a warrior object. But if you had read into it and realized that my warrior objects were gallo glass, you would have said return gallo glass. So that's the object type that is. So, but object would have been fine as well because it answered the question. So if I now said get warrior, and I needed to then, what did it say? It received the name. So again, it's the same thing. I need to return. Now, if you're returning a gallo glass or any sort of object type, your default, if it's nothing, if it doesn't find it, is null. So you return null. And now, all I actually need to do, I could do the following, and I could do the search exactly like I did above, or I could go if open brackets, int pos is equal to get pos. I could just run that method, and then I would say if open brackets pos is equal to -1, meaning it wasn't found. Do you guys get me?
Yeah.
So if it wasn't found, return null. Else, return warriors position pos. Now this is where I think Scott did well. He redid the search and made sure that he would return, if he didn't find it, that he would return, whereas I just used the get pos, and if it was -1 I did that. But both ways you're making sure that you would not, and ironically I should make this worth 3 marks for taking that into account if it's -1. I wouldn't have deducted a mark in this case because I didn't award a mark for the fact that you took into account that it didn't exist. Yes.
So is it better to run the previous method, or is it better to kind of do a new search then, if you get what I'm saying?
It would make 0 difference. And marks wise, the computer would run through the loop as well, so time wise it wouldn't make any difference to the computer, so the difference would be negligible. So I would not consider either to be wrong. I would just consider whichever is easier to program or quicker for you. There's 0 issue on that. Alright, now, but do you guys get the concept of this? Do you guys get this? All I'm doing is I'm doing a search for a warrior. In this case, there's 2 different types of searches. One type of search where you find the position, you just return the integer position, and another search where you actually return the whole entire object. Do you guys get me? I might not ask you to do an integer position search first. I might immediately just ask you to do an object search. Do you guys get me? So one, you just return the object, the other one, you just return an integer position value. They're 2 different concepts of searching. You just return different things. But you read what receives and what returns. That is NB. The number of you who got that wrong irritated me, because that's basic. Enzo, focus please. Now, write a code to create a method called getTotalHealth, okay, which will return the total health. Does it mention anything about receiving anything? Does it need to receive anything? So I have got a method that's going to be public int get total health. It doesn't receive anything, and I know I'm needing to get a total, and I return. So defaultly, I would, even in these cases, I would defaultly always create a blank variable, return that blank variable. I have got a mark. It is worthwhile just learning how to create methods. You create a method, you figure out what it returns, what it receives, you create a blank version of what it returns and returns it. Or regurgitate that every single method, even your most complicated of methods, there will be a mark awarded for the fact that you can understand how to put the structure of the method together. Do you guys get me? Do you? Okay. So now in this case, I know I need to loop through my array. So I go for tab. I loop through my array. It's num warriors. I then would go total plus equals warriors position I dot get health. So then all I'm doing is because remember this, the reason why we loop through, and I go position I, I'm getting into specific objects. So if you guys were my array, I initialize each one of you on my warriors. I go, Sarah, what is your damage? Okay, Shane, what is your damage? And I add them together. So I loop through each individual object in my array, and I get your damages, and I add them together. Do you guys get me? This is why we loop through each individual position. So to refer to an individual object, we use brackets, whatever position we want to work from. Do you guys get me on this?
Yeah.
Now, the next question says get average. It just says which will return the average health. Again, there is nothing there about receiving anything. So my method will look like this. And I will need to return a number. So quite frankly, if you went through the idea of int avg is equal to 0 semicolon and return avg, you've got the mark. You've got one mark out of the two. But technically, personally, I would do this. You guys don't have to do it this way. This is just what I would do. Done. There were a couple of individuals who decided to divide it by. I actually don't remember in this head. They get total health divided by, and they said array dot length. Now I set my array to size 500. So now, if only 5 warriors were initialized, but you divide it by 500, your average is going to be tiny because it's not full. So you would need to make sure you divide by the num warriors. Okay, now a create a method called sort, which will sort the warriors by their health descending. Now this doesn't return anything or receive anything, so I know it is void because it doesn't return anything. And it's not. There were a couple of people who decided, because I went through one example where a boolean was received in the parameter, they decided let's receive a boolean. Why? It didn't ask you to receive an email. It didn't ask you to overcomplicate. This is just the basic sort, and it is going to sort descending. So it says sort which will by the health descending. So for a sort, rule of thumb, 4 tab enter, 4 tab enter inside the for. You loop up until num warriors -1. You start your J, so your outer loop goes from 0 to num warriors -1. Your inner loop goes from I +1 to num warriors. You then have to do an if, and you need to see if the one is greater than the other. So if I say if position J, so I always work with the inner loop is greater than the outer loop, work from there. Sorry, my lift is ready. Alright, so I would go if what is the name? If warriors position J. Now you can't just now compare it to another warrior, because how do I compare Sarah to Shane? You have to, I could say specifically refer to an attribute of them. So I could say get height, get health, get something. So I'd say which attribute when I compare two objects. I can't just go which one's greater than the other, because there's no way of pairing them. You have to specifically refer to a quantifiable attribute that you could compare. So dot get health is greater than warriors position I dot get health, and if that's the case, then I want to swap them. And to swap them, some of you, this was so annoying. Some of you did this, and I was like,
I also did that.
It's like what you did is you swapped the healths, and I'm like, okay, all of a sudden, so now Shane's gonna get Sarah's health, and Sarah's gonna get Shane's health. No, you swap Sarah and Shane around. So you don't just swap people's healths. You swap the actual whole entire object. So what you do is you create a temporary warrior, which is a Gallo Go class called temp. You make that equal to warrior at position J. Guys, shh, quiet. You then would go warriors position J is equal to warriors position I. You would then go warriors position I is equal to temp. Okay. Now, so that's the sort done. Now after the sort, you've got a get max damage per second. Now nobody got 6 out of 6 for this because of the word where I said marks are awarded for encapsulation. Now, guys, in the test I verbally said to you, a encapsulation is when anything pertaining to an object is coded within the object. Do you guys get me? Yeah. Okay. Now, what you'll notice with that is that when I say, firstly, I'm asking you to get the maximum damage per second. Now, firstly, I would then, the damage per second has to do with the warrior, doesn't it? Or the weapon, doesn't it? Yeah. So, you should have coded the get damage per second method in the weapon class, because that damage per second has to do with the weapon. Do you guys get me on that? Yeah. The damage per second has to do with the weapon object, the singular weapon object. So I should not be trying to determine it inside my my manager class. That should be done inside my weapon class. I should have come up with a method here that would go public int get damage per second. Now, how would I get the damage per second? Some of you started multiplying it per second, which is not right. Well, wait, it is, isn't it? Because it's how many hits there are per second. I think in the thing up here it says, I think in the actual earlier one, and it told you that it's the swings per second. Yeah. So the get damage per second would be return. You would return. Damn it! You would return damage times speed. No, because if you hit twice per second, so if I deal 100 damage and I have 2 swings per second, I do 200 damage per second. Does that make sense?
Because I thought if you strike 10 times over 5 seconds, then you'll use
no, okay. I put this, but I didn't deduct any marks if you timed the divider, because I don't think in this particular question paper I didn't specify whether it's you take 5 seconds to swing or whether it's this number of swings per second. So I didn't specify that, so I didn't deduct a mark on that regard. Okay, but I actually meant it, the fact that it would mean how many swings you did per second. Okay, so it was just, but I didn't deduct any marks on that regard. But I deducted 2 marks were awarded for the fact that you separated the get damage per second into the actual weapon class, and this was those marks were your advanced higher order marks, and I actually only expected that was meant for your people who got complete understanding of the concept of object oriented programming. The fact that so I think that was the only 2 marks that Scott lost actually, was these 2.
That's cool actually, after test.
Yeah. Now the next thing that you do here is in my manager class, I now got to create my method that is going to do what it's asking me to, which says get damage per second, which will return the object with the highest damage. Now again, what is it going to return? The weapon object. Now again here, I think Malcolm, you again just returned object. Here I potentially should have deducted a mark from you because it did say the weapon object. So borderline, but it didn't put a capital letter there, so I'll give it to you. Okay, so public weapon gets max damage per second, and I am then going to return the weapon with the most maximum damage. Now, first thing we're going to have to do is this is a bit tricky because to get a max, I'm going to have to return a pos. So I'm going to start off pos. Interestingly enough, you start off pos at 0. Okay, now bear with me on this. I will then go, and this one was an unseen problem, so I'm glad that you guys tried it and everything. I'll go int pos, I'll then go int max, and I'll set my max to be my warriors at position 0 dot get health. Technically,
Wouldn't it be damage to
sorry, thank you. Sorry, it's not it's not warriors either, is it? It's weapons dot position 0 dot get damage per second. Now that would be the starting, so I'm already assuming that my first weapon is my most damaging weapon. Do you guys get me? However, what potential do I have here for a problem? Do you guys get me? Do you guys get me on that? Now, in this case, I'm going to say, so here I would return weapons at position pos, which will be the max damage. So now what I do is I create my loop like I would normally loop, right? So through my num weapons, but instead of starting at 0, because I've already assumed 0 is the maximum damage, do you guys get me? I'm going to start at 1. So now looking at the next one. And only if the damage of the weapon, the weapon at position I, damn it, weapons at position I dot get damage per second is greater than the max, only if that is the case do I then make pos equal to I, and I then make max equal to get damage per weapons position I dot get damage per second. Now, what you'll notice there, so the main things, 2 marks were awarded for the fact that you separated the get damage per second into the object, so you don't, each one you don't try to do the whole thing, your object should handle that because it's got to do with the object. And then there was 4 marks for the fact that you created a pos, you created a weapon sort of arrays. There was 1 mark for your method structure. Did you loop? I think I was quite lenient in the marking because I think it was quite tricky. So I looked at the idea if you loop through the array. I didn't even look into the idea that you checked if there were objects in there first. But usually speaking, I start at 0. And then I work from there. Do you guys get me? Okay, now the last question now that we move on to is the GUI, and we have 7 minutes to finish the GUI. It says there, sort button should be pressed and then run the sort display all. So I go into my GUI class. I'm going to make my life easier personally. I prefer doing it this way. I'm going to create a method called huh? Yeah, good question. I don't know. And then we've got a search once, and I'm going to go private void search. I've then got a health one. We've then got a max damage per second. Guys, quiet please, too much talking back there. There were a lot of you, guys, there's a lot of you who didn't get these marks. And these marks, you could get, even if none of your stuff worked, you could get these marks. So now, in my sort method, it asks me to run the sort and then display all. So from my manager, I just go man.sort, I then go run my display all. Done. 2 marks. I just run my sort method because that would sort my manager class, and then I run it. My search one's a little bit more tricky, that's why there's 3 marks here. Here it says it will get the object that has the warrior name that is inserted into the text field called txt warrior. So string name is equal to txt warrior name dot get text. So that would get the text that the user entered as being the warrior text. Do you guys get that? I am then going to say I'm going to get a. I'm just going to show you what we'll run. If I say I would personally run the get warrior class and send through that name. So this will return the warrior object. So what I can do is I can just say this dot toString. Do you guys get me? So warrior.getName.toString, so I'll get the full text representation of that, and then I'll make my txt display dot set text to be. Some people here, I'm not going to name names, in the GUI went and they kept on running the display all. So they ran the sorts, and they ran the sort was correct. But when they did this where they tried to find the warrior, but then they said display all, but it had nothing to do with that. You don't want to display all, you want to display the specific warrior that was searched for. So you have to be careful that you look what's happening there. Does that make sense? Okay. Now my next one is health. It says should display both the total health and the average weight. So int tot health is equal to manager.get total health, semicolon, int avg health is equal to man.get average health. Now I did deduct a mark. If you guys made technically there would be a mark awarded for the fact that you represent it decently. So it should be, you should then say total health plus tot health plus average. We can put a backslash in there. You guys follow? Okay, now.
So shouldn't you be saying set text and not get text?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yes. Well spotted there, Liam. Thank you. All right, now, we've got there. So we've set the text of that, and the last one is max damage to display the maximum damage of it. So we just would then go int max. I'll just go max is equal to man dot get max damage per second, semicolon. Oh yeah, true. A good point. In the question, it did tell you to return the object, so this should be actually string max, and then I'll go dot toString here. And then here, I'll then go txt display dot set text to max. Done. Alright guys, we run this to test it, then this video's over, and we've got 2 minutes to spare, so booyah. Okay, so now if I go sort, it's because it's already in order. Oh, thank you. I do that way too often. Yes, I do that like every time.
So you get way too excited to see that it works.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't work.
It's like every single time I do this. It's ridiculous.
And now we'll have like 30 seconds to see that it works.
You have little. True, actually, you're right. No, I don't need to, because health has got the display in there. Display all, and I already coded the display all button, because that was in the last question actually. But this is the max health, right? Max damage per second. All right, guys, let's try this again. Now that I'm hopefully, guys, quiet, please. Sort. Yay, things are sorted. Search for. This is for warrior, right? So I'm going to search for Tom. Search.
I think you have to search Tom the Hardy. Yeah, you have to search.
Whoa! Null pointer exception.
Tom the Hardy.
Oh, true. So you think I have to search for Tom Hardy.
The Hardy.
Guys, interestingly,
No, medics. It doesn't work.
Tom the Hardy.
Just Tom the Hardy. Boolean, sir.
Hey, okay. Now, guys, interestingly, that shows error in my coding, right? So if this was a project I should have to handle if I actually got a null warrior, and I'd have to then not display it. So I'd have to put an if null, make sure you display, sorry, there's nothing exists, or you got nothing in your string. It shouldn't be an error like that. Do you guys get me?
Say enter full name, sir.
Yeah, something like that, sure. So health stats work, max damage. Sweet, happy birthday to you guys. Goodbye.
Thanks, sir. See you tomorrow.